Hello and welcome to another WFL breakdown. This breakdown is on man and zone coverage in WFL, our new tendencies around zone coverage in particular, our new rules around zone coverage, and our expectations in both man and zone coverage in the WFL. I am your host, Winuvas, one of the leadership team here in the WFL, and we're going to have a little PowerPoint presentation. There won't be a quiz afterwards, even though I am an instructor in my real life world. But I want to go through this PowerPoint presentation because it is important to make sure you understand each of the concepts, what we're talking about, and how to kind of clarify them in your mind. And hopefully this will be an easy breakdown to get behind and get understood. All right, so as we come into our PowerPoint presentation, I have to excuse the presentation because I do have to do a little bit of finagling to make sure it's coming up for you guys the way I wanted you to see it. So bear with me in just a second as I get everything adjusted. There we go. So our WFL coverage rules. If you're in man coverage, and I'm emphasizing man coverage first, mainly because I want to make sure that man coverage, even though that's not where our rules per se are being focused in Madden 24 as far as new rules, I want to make sure the expectations as far as what your responsibilities are in man coverage are covered in this video, so that way there's no ambiguity, there's no I didn't know, I didn't think that was the way y'all viewed coverage. I kind of want to make sure everything is in order and everything is succinct and everything is the way I would like it to be and understood in the WFL. So with man coverage, it's pretty basic. Essentially, you're going to cover whoever you are assigned to cover via the play art. If you are streaming, obviously you're going to be showing your play art for that full second before the ball is snapped, or you should be every play if you are streaming. However, with Madden 24, we do have an option now to at least show the individual defender you are using their play art and have that be forced to be on. We are going to have that on for Madden 24, so be aware when you select a player, it will show their coverage responsibility on your screen pre-snap. So you must cover the man that you're assigned to in the play art. If that man stays into block, you can go ahead and blitz, you can gamble, or you can quarterback spy, and I'm going to wrap back around the quarterback spy in just a minute, but I want to go over gambling. If you're going to gamble in man coverage, you must stay with your gamble for the rest of your play. The saying I'm coming up with here is, once you commit, you must stick. Gambling in man coverage simply means that you are going to change direction to cover a different man than assigned. Obviously, in man coverage, you're not going to be strafing. You're going to be more beelining for the player that you are assigned to cover and follow them to the best of your ability. So in man coverage, it's going to be a little harder to distinguish whether or not you're trying to change or trying to cover a different person. So what we're going to be looking for in the gameplay side and the gameplay guru side is we're going to be looking for someone who basically bolting one direction, we see what player they're covering, and then suddenly changes to a different player. Once that change has been determined to have been made, which once again, this is a judgment call, so this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. We are going to make the judgment call as to whether or not you change defend or you change coverage assignments, or whether or not you were just trying to keep up with your player. We will try and err on the side of caution early on to let everybody get acclimated to this rule set and these expectations that we're setting. But be aware that we're going to put the clamps down as we move on to make sure everybody is following these to the letter of the law as best they can. So with quarterback spy, now with quarterback spy, that's a little bit different. Obviously, in quarterback spy, or if you're set to be the quarterback spy, your job is to mimic what the quarterback does. That does not mean that you are allowed to freewheel and become a hook zone. You are not in zone coverage. You're essentially manned up on the quarterback, which means you should be following wherever they're going, and you should be kind of in the middle of the field if they're in the pocket. Does that kind of mean you're in a zone? Not really. You're in man coverage on the quarterback. You're trying to anticipate where that ball is going, or if the quarterback's going to break the pocket. So with quarterback spy, it's going to be a little bit tougher to administer these rules. But do be aware we will be looking if you are in quarterback spy, or if you choose to go to quarterback spy mode if your man stays in the block. Do be aware we will be looking for you once you make a decision on choosing a defender. That's going to be your gamble for that play. So if your quarterback is staying in the pocket and you choose to stay in your pocket as the middle linebacker, because typically the middle linebacker or the interior safety is playing that spy coverage, generally speaking, you should be in the middle of the field as well. You shouldn't be roaming a whole lot unless your quarterback is roaming one direction or the other. But do be aware that once you think you know where the ball is going, that's your gamble. And once you make a break towards a player you think is getting the ball, that's your commitment for that play. Okay? That is your commitment for that play. Once you commit, you must stick. Now, zone coverage is a little bit of a different beast than man coverage. Obviously, in man coverage, you're going to be more running full speed. You're not going to be strafing as much. In a zone coverage setup, you typically will have the strafe button held down because you'll be kind of floating around trying to stay on your toes, trying to be aware and be able to jump towards anything you see as a threat in your area. In zone coverage, you can cover your assigned zone, your primary responsibility for the play, and up to one other adjacent zone. And adjacent zones I will show you in just a second on a second slide. And you can still gamble in zone coverage. There's a little bit of a different definition if you're in zone coverage. But just like with man coverage, if you gamble, you must stay on your man for the rest of the play. The man you gamble to, you have to stick with and abandon your primary responsibility for the rest of the play. Once you commit, you must stick. If you're gambling in zone coverage, what we're going to be looking for from a gameplay side is we're going to be looking for you to break strafe and chase a specific receiver or go after a specific receiver. Once we determine that we think you have broken strafe to chase a defender, that's your gamble for the play. You are not allowed, once you gamble, to go back into zone coverage. If you see a threat and you determine it's a threat and you chase the threat, you're not then allowed to go, okay, it's no longer a threat, I'm going to go back to my zone. No, you must chase that threat for the remainder of the play. If you choose to stay in zone, that's fine, and you let that threat kind of tail it off and hopefully pass it off to another person who's got zone coverage deeper or behind you or to your left or to your right. But essentially, if you're in zone coverage, you have that primary responsibility. If you choose to abandon it because you think you see a bigger threat, then you are not allowed to then go back into zone coverage once the threat has left your area. You either follow the threat or you let it go through your area and tell it to the best of your ability while still strafing. Once you break strafe, you are determined to be gambling. Once you gamble, you must chase that gambled player for the rest of the play. And when I say rest of the play, to make sure this is understood, that is until the ball is thrown. I will emphasize that multiple times as we go through different concepts of zone coverage. Do be aware that once the ball is thrown, all these coverage rules go out the window and you become a defender that's trying to make a play on the football. Your primary responsibility is the football at that point. No longer is it tied to a specific zone. Okay? Now I'm going to bring up the zone chart real quick, and you can see we have some attachments here. We have curl flats, hook curls, mid-read hooks. We have flat zones, and we have the deep sections of the field. And I'm sorry, I apologize, just a little cut off. Let me see if I can get it a little bit better centered. There we go. Just want to make sure you can see everything that I see in this note. And be aware that anywhere you see a line, that is an eligible move. I will highlight a couple here just to make sure you understand what we're talking about. I will circle them in, red. This is an eligible move right here. I know I'm circling in red. Red will later on in this video be what not to do. But this is an eligible move. I want to circle it in a color that hopefully you can see pretty well. That's an eligible move from the hook curl. That's an eligible move from the hook curl. This is an eligible move only if you're in a cover 4 or a cover 6/9 where the cover 4 is to your side of the field. We will detail that more in length when I get to the cover 4 side of this presentation. But just be aware that that hook curl, this eligible move, is only eligible in a cover 4. If you're in a cover 3, if you're in a cover 2, you cannot come to this portion of the field. It is locked off. It is off limits. You also cannot come to this high third ever, no matter what. You're not allowed to venture to the back part of the field. The only player that can venture to the back part of the field is the mid-read 3 receiver hook. who has the option from the middle of the field to venture back to that deep third section. Okay, be aware of that. And by the way, this is a catch-all chart. What that means is even if the play art isn't represented on your play you call, you still have the ability to trail back there, giving you some added flexibility. I will show you in a couple of slides. We will start with the cover 2. This is a cover 2 invert. I realize it's an unusual cover 2 because your corners are playing your deep halves rather than your safeties. But I want to show this off just to make sure that everybody understands how this concept's going to work and how we're going to view things as we go forward. Okay, so as we go through this slide, I will show you, and I will circle back to the original slide where the actual big chart is, and always use that big chart to kind of determine what you can do based on the current play call you have to the player. And I'm going to start with this one because this is a little unusual. We have a safety that's running the mid zone. Okay, so we have a safety here in the mid zone. This is his primary responsibility. This is number 1. Okay, now by our chart rules, these are eligible moves he can make as a secondary choice. He only gets one of these during this play. Be aware of that. He can either come down here. This is option 2A, we'll call it. Oop, as my A is terrible. This is another hook zone nearby. This is adjacent to this player's zone. He can choose to help with that area. He can choose to help with this area. This is an adjacent zone, 2B. He can also, even if it's not in the play art, he can also trail back and become a deep third player. This is 2C. He can also do this. What he can't do, and I'm going to highlight red here just to show what he can't do on this play as far as a secondary responsibility, he cannot come over here. He cannot come over here. And he definitely cannot get to the zones in the flats. Okay? These are off limits to that specific player, that specific zone. Okay? But you have access to 3 zones that you can hit, one of which is not even in the play art. So you can, essentially, if you choose, you can mimic a cover 3. So if you feel like you've got a mid zone and you're following a threat and the threat trails behind you and you don't know if your safeties can handle it, you can make this your secondary responsibility in strafe and essentially trail it back, leaving this interior obviously open because you're trailing back. You're leaving that underneath of the field open for a potential exploit, okay, by the offense. But you can have this choice, okay? Now let me go in and I'm going to erase the reds temporarily. Or no, never mind. I'm going to erase everything as I come back in. So once again, we'll go, this is your primary responsibility. We'll call this 2A this time. Okay. We'll call this 2B. And we'll call this 2C. Now, once you make a choice, and I'm going to use highlighter for this. Once you make a choice, so let's say you decide, oh, highlighter, that's a terrible highlighter color for this particular play art. Let's go with a blue. If you choose to, oh, that's still terrible. Let me just draw it in a line. I was going to highlight it and make it pretty, but if you choose to be here, if these are your 2 zones, your primary and your secondary, you can always go back to your primary as long as you're strafing. So if you determine your deep threat can be covered by the deep safeties, or deep corners in this case, then you can always go back as long as you're strafing to your primary responsibility. You are always allowed to go back to your primary responsibility as long as you are still strafing. Once you make a decision and commit to a secondary zone to cover, even legal adjacent zones for that play are no longer allowed to you. If you choose to go back and be that third safety, quote unquote, even though you are safety at this point, and then you choose to come back down strafing, you can bounce between these 2 areas as long as you're strafing. Once you commit to your secondary zone, however, even legal zones are disallowed. This is to prevent players from essentially moseying the field going from 1 to 2 to 3, and then over here, and then coming back, and then over here and coming back. Because realistically, on a play, you at most, even with the most athletic of players, can only cover at most 2 zones. Your zone, your primary zone, and 1 adjacent zone. It is unrealistic, and even though it's in Madden, it is unrealistic to expect a player to be able to cover 4 places in one play, running around like a chicken with your head cut off. That is what we seek to eliminate in WFL. So this rule hopefully helps clarify that. Do be aware, always use the main chart for examples as far as where you can go based on the zone you have in that particular play. So like in this example, obviously there is no deep third of the field. This is a cover 2. However, you can make it a makeshift cover 3 if you feel like there's a threat in that area, as long as you are strafing. Anytime you decide to break strafe and gamble, you're committed to the man you're gambling on for the rest of the play. So in this case, let's say you're in your zone here. Oh, don't go to the next slide yet. Let me get green back up. You're in this zone here, and you feel like the tight end, maybe there's a tight end coming on a seam, and you don't know if this corner is going to be able to get back in time. You can break strafe and go with him. And let me highlight that in black. Okay? You can break strafe and go with him. But once you break strafe, you are not then allowed to come back and play a zone. You have to stick with the man you go with once you break strafe. Again, once you commit, you must stick. Okay? So let's go over one more in this area to kind of break it down. Or actually, we'll go to the next slide and we'll try and break down some different ones. So let's go to cover 3. So obviously in a cover 3 setup, we have the 3 deep safeties, and this is a quarters defense. So I know that sometimes these plays that I'm showing are not going to be something you may run, but just be aware the general concept is there. Obviously, there's cover 3 in every section, every formation of the defensive book, no matter what defensive book you use. So let's this time highlight this guy here. All right, this is one of our hooks on the outside. So we're going to mark this as his primary responsibility. So here we go. I'm going to go back to the main chart, and this is the hook curl we're looking at. So let me circle it real quick just to make sure we're all on the same page. This is the one we're looking at. We're always looking based on play side. So this is the one we're looking at. So based on this play art, I'm going to erase this because I'm going to forget to if I don't. Based on this play art, here's what we can do. Here are our legal adjacent zones. The first one is over here. That's a curl flat. Or no, that's not curl flat. Sorry, that's curl. Oh, that is curl flat. Flat zone. Okay, so you got curl flat over here. That is a legal move for you. Coming to the middle of the field. This is a legal move for you. Coming into the flat, the true flat, the hard flat. That's a legal move for you. Okay, what isn't a legal move in cover 3? In cover 3, I want to emphasize that in cover 3, you can't come back here. This is not allowed. And pretty much everything on this side of the field is a big, fat no-no. If you're playing on the left side, the play art left side of the field, I should never see you on the right side of the field unless you are chasing somebody and gambling. You should never be over here at all from that position, because this is definitely outside your area of responsibility unless you are gambling. I want to emphasize, unless you're gambling, I should never see a user from the left side end up on the right side of the field unless you're gambling or the play is already basically resolved and you're going to make a play. Okay? So, with that being said, let me erase some of this stuff. Let me erase all the red stuff. Oh gosh, let me just erase everything. It's going to take me forever to erase that. Alright, let's go back in. Let's go to this. Once again, just like with the first play where we went mid-zone, remember we had, this was one of our options. This was another option. And this was our third and final option we had on this play. Even though we don't have a curl flat, we don't have a purple zone in this play, you can still convert to that if you want to. So if you see maybe a flood concept where you want to provide some extra help on that sideline because you only have 2 defenders, you have this hard flat and you have this deep third. You want to provide some extra guidance on that flood concept. You want to provide a third defender in that area to kind of help kind of throw that into disarray. You can float over there. That's fine. But again, once you commit to that secondary zone, even legal adjacent zones are no longer accessible to you for this play. Okay? And I want to emphasize for that play. Just because you make that decision one time does not mean you have to make it every single time. I hope that's understood. So if you choose to cover that curl flat like I have circled here on play 1, on play 2, if you choose to cover that hard flat in the center here, if you choose to come up this way, then obviously this is your legal. I circled it in red. I do apologize. I circled it in red. But if this is your main area of responsibility, then this would be X'd off, and obviously this would be X'd off as well. And you'd be allowed to come to these two areas and these two areas only. Okay? That's where we give you some capabilities to be flexible. But do be aware of a couple of things, and I'll mention it now. Always be aware of a couple of things. If this is your primary main responsibility here, and let's say you're tired of seeing this drag come across your left side and basically beat your defenders over here, you can gamble. Always you can gamble, but once you gamble and you break strafe to chase this curl or this drag defender, or this drag offensive player, once you commit, you must stick. You cannot, once you get done with this, once you chase, you cannot, and I'm highlighting red, you cannot go, okay, you know what, I'm changing my mind, I'm going to come back over here. You cannot do that. That red line, no. You have to stick on the blue line. You have to stick with your gamble for the rest of the play. And again, rest of the play simply means until the ball is thrown. And I'm going to emphasize here until the ball is thrown because normally, let's go back to pin here, and we're going to go back and we're going to highlight the same player. We're going to highlight this guy here. Okay, we're going to put on the 1, we're going to put on the 2, and I'm going to spare you the actual extra letters. So we're just going to say second, second, and second. Once the ball is in the air, however, once the ball is in the air, you have the option. Oh, sorry, doing something different. There we go, okay. Something messed up on my end, I do apologize. Once the ball is in the air, if it goes over here, and you're playing this zone, you can go and make a break on the ball. Once the ball is thrown, if you want a user try and chase that down, you are more than welcome to do so. Once the ball is in the air, all responsibilities are null and void. Just like with no switch. Once the ball is in the air, you can't switch. Once the ball is in the air, you go chase the football. That is your primary responsibility now. Get to the football. Okay? So with that being said, that's cover 3. Now we're going to go to cover 4. This is where the rules kind of have to differ a little bit. So I want to go over this, and I'm going to go over it with my hooks. Or actually, I'm going to go over it with my curls. My curl flats, my purple zones here. So we're going to go with, oops, wrong color. We're going to go with my curl right here. So we're going to call that number 1. I started to write it 2, so bear with me. So curl responsibilities in a cover 4. You are allowed to go here. This is a secondary responsibility you can have. You are allowed to go here. This is a secondary responsibility you have. Even if it's not in the play art, you have that responsibility. And now I'm going to bounce back to the original. Curl flat, you can go here in a cover 3, but also in a cover 4, as I go back to you are allowed to go to this area of the field. You are allowed to go to this area of the field. This is your 2C responsibility. Normally a zone will have at least 2 areas adjacent to it. Sometimes it'll have 3. Sometimes it will even have 4. Okay, sometimes it will have 4. But usually it will be no more than 3. These are your choices. So if you choose, for example, and I'll circle it in yellow since you could probably see it on this. If you choose this area and you choose to help with the deep and give a 5th deep option, once you choose that, even legal options you had before are no longer applicable to you. You cannot bounce from here to here and then bounce out to somewhere else. The 2 arrows I just drew, those are not allowed by our rules. You have to stay within those means of once you make a decision in strafe, you have to stick with it. And remember, you have to be strafing during this play for it to be considered you in zone coverage. So do be aware, we're going to be looking for that as we go forward. Strafing, and once you break strafe, we're assuming you're gambling at that point. That's what our assumption is going to be. Okay? But you can always gamble, obviously. Gambling is never something you cannot do, but once you commit to the gamble, you must stick to the gamble until the play is resolved, until the ball is thrown. Okay? Once the ball is thrown, you go get it. Okay? You go get it. Remember, you can't switch to the closest defender. That's our rule as far as no switch goes. But you are allowed to go try and make a play on the ball if you think you can, or at the very least be in position with the defender you have usured to maybe make a play. Maybe you want to try a hit stick. Do remember our hit stick rules require you to be as the player for the entirety of the play. You cannot hit stick if you switch players during a play. So do be aware of that. Let's circle one more player in this cover 4 setup because I want to highlight the hook zones again. I know we've talked a lot about these hook zones, these yellow zones, but they're important in this case because we are in cover 4, this was a responsibility we were allowed before. This is not a problem. This is a responsibility we were allowed before. This is also not a problem. 2B. Okay? But one thing we can do, and this is a responsibility we're allowed to do. We are allowed to do curl. We're allowed to do that true flat. I don't think I highlighted that on the cover 2, but do be aware that we are using the main chart. So this zone, this hook zone here, not the mid zone, but a hook zone, it is allowed to go to this curl flat. Okay? When you have only 2 defenders, essentially there is no middle guy, so you are allowed to hit these flats when there's only 2 yellow zones. Okay? But one other option you have, a fourth option, is you can trail back here to this quadrant of the field. Only this quadrant of the field, though. You are allowed to hit this quarters of cover 4. You are not allowed, let me go ahead and go back to my red, make sure we emphasize it, not allowed to go here. You definitely should not be over here, over here, over here. You cannot go over here either. Okay? Anything with a red X you're not allowed to go to until the ball is thrown. Once the ball is thrown, let's say the ball is going to this area of the field over here, and you're here, you can go make a play on it. If you trailed to back here, because this was your decision for your secondary zone, you can beeline over there and go try and make a play on the ball. You can always try to make a play on the ball once the ball is thrown. These coverage rules are only for before the ball is thrown to help mimic real life to a certain extent and make sure that you can't just run willy-nilly all over the field. Okay? This is to prevent, we've all had user games where we've seen what I call the chicken with the head cut off linebacker or safety that basically just runs around like a crazy person in the middle of the field to disrupt you and confuse you. That will be highly, highly frowned upon. Dare I say illegal in WFL. Because of the fact of these rules, you have to be strafing to be in zone coverage. If you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, that means you're in gambling mode, which means you should be sticking to a primary receiver you have made a decision on and going with that player until the ball is thrown. Once the ball is thrown, you are free to do whatever you want. Your responsibilities are no longer in play at that point. And then finally, we will go over the cover 6 or 9 portion of this diagram. Okay, so we're going to go over cover 6, cover 9 as I go back to my OBS real quick to make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to and everything is fine and dandy. Good deal. All right, so here we go. So with this, we have to mimic, remember we have to mimic that setup of, and I've got a pink zone in here, which we're treating as a purple. Whoops. We're treating as a purple here for the purposes of this. All right, so we'll go with this guy. We'll go with this guy here. There's your primary responsibility. So we're treating this as a curl flat. So the curl flat options are still there. We got 2A right here. We got 2B right here. And we have 2C right here. Okay? These are your primary responsibilities. Again, once you choose one, you're stuck to one. What I want to emphasize, though, is once again, I like picking on these guys. This right here, primary responsibility numero uno. Okay? So once again, oh, I cheated a little bit. You can go here. This is 2A. And in a 2 yellow zone setup, you can go right here. So you have 2B. You have, ooh, where's my cursor? There, okay. Lose my cursor sometimes, guys. I'm sorry. 2C. And then you have, because this is the cover 4 side, you do have an extra option to trail back here. Okay. This is the cover 4 side. However, this is our primary person here. Okay. You have this curl flat you can come to and help out with. Or, yeah. You have the hard flat you can come and help out with. You have the mid zone or the other hook zone in this case. I know it's kind of in the middle, but I'm treating this as a hook zone. So basically this is not a mid-read setup. Once you commit to these two, one of these 3 options, you're committed for the play. Where you can't go back here. Now you might say, well, why not? This guy can go back there. That's because that's a cover 4 legal move, and this is a cover 4 side. This is a cover 2 side. This is a deep half of the field. So we're treating this as this big circle here. And as you can see, this is an eligible move only if in cover 4. You are not in cover 4 on this play. If you are this player, you're on the cover 2 side. If you're on the cover 2 side, this simply means that this area is off limits to you trailing back there until the ball is thrown. Once again, if the ball is thrown and it's thrown to this area, let's say this is the target right here, and you're here, you can make a beeline back there once the ball is thrown. Will you make it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Okay? But once the ball is thrown, you're allowed to go make a play. You just can't go back there in zone coverage, strafing legally on the cover 2 side. On the cover 4 side, if you are this player, you can go back there. You can go here. 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 This, however, this player cannot go back here because it's the cover 2 side. I hope that helps justify some of this. I hope that helps clear up some of these issues. I hope that helps as I come back on camera for the last little bit. I hope this breakdown helps out. Again, this is new to Madden 24, this zone coverage setup, this zone board as we're calling it. So do be aware, we know there's going to be some hiccups. We know there's going to be some issues. We will try to be lenient wherever possible. And I will state as one of the gameplay gurus, most of the people that I know of that are currently in Madden 24 don't really have a problem, I don't think, with this for the most part. There might be slip-ups, but I think for the most part, most folks are pretty locked into how we play, and this isn't really going to really phase you. It's more for the folks that are going to be coming in from other leagues with some bad habits that we're going to try and help them get through. Okay, but again, if you have any questions on any of these concepts, if you have any questions on how this will work and operate, if you have any questions on how we're going to deal with things, we will answer them to the best of our ability, meaning WFL Leadership. You can tag a member of Leadership, or you can DM me directly if you have any questions about this video. If you happen across this across the internet and you would like to kind of check this league out, we do have a link to our Discord where you can go through our application process. Once you go through our application process, you will have your option of taking any open team we have available, if we have any. If not, you'll be put on the waiting list. You'll get to join the community. You'll get to chat with the guys and see if this is a place you think you can fit in long term. If you are part of the WFL and viewing this, hey, thanks for watching. If you're not and you happen across this, hey, thanks for watching. I've been Winuvas. This is one of the leadership team in their WFL. This has been a WFL breakdown on how we are looking at man and zone coverages, particularly zone coverages, but clarifying our man coverage concepts and our viewpoints as we move into the Madden 24 season. Madden 24, as of recording, is just around the corner, maybe 2 weeks away, I believe. About 2 weeks away, give or take, as far as early release. So August 18th is not far away, guys. Looking forward to another good WFL season. Looking forward to getting full. Looking forward to enjoying time with everybody. Thank you for watching. Appreciate your time as always. Have a good one, guys.